listeners. Welcome to episode 81 of C3 Crystals, Cauldrons, and Cocktails. I'm River.
And I'm Wren.
And I'm a little loopy today. I actually have a headache. But today
Uh-huh.
we are going to be talking about tulpas. It's something that we mentioned in one of our other episodes, and we had some listeners request more on that information. I believe Greg might have been one of those people. So I didn't have time to make a drink today. What are you drinking?
Yeah, I didn't really have much time either. I am drinking green tea.
That sounds appropriate. I just grabbed a
Yeah.
bottle of wine. I'm drinking some of my sparkling Brut Rosé wine.
Yeah.
It is
It's just
just
been
an
yeah.
easy, instant fix for me. My head really is killing me. So,
Yeah.
um,
It's just been one of those weeks where you're just like, oh,
mhm.
like you're I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I've been so tired now. Like I've been tired to the point where I went to the doctor today because I was like, I have to have a vitamin deficiency.
Did they say?
No, no, no. They drew my blood and they'll get back to me
Okay,
later.
okay. Well, that's
But
frightening.
well, I'm just hoping that like, oh, you're just low on vitamin D. Eat
Hmm.
some gummies. Go
Or
stand in the
go sit
sun.
in the sun.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so
It's that time of
maybe.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll see. I'm just super exhausted and then thinking about putting together a drink with minimal ingredients that I have at home is
I know. I couldn't even think of that. And I really didn't feel like drinking today,
Yeah,
other than my wine I can always drink. I love my wine.
yeah, yeah. A tea
All
sounded
right.
nice today for me, so.
Yeah, that actually does sound, that's probably what
Mhm.
I should be drinking is green tea that doesn't have caffeine, but nice and
Yeah.
soothing.
Uh-huh.
All right. So I'm really excited about this topic. It's super interesting. What is a tulpa? So, this is the idea that given enough thought and focus, we can actually create real sentient beings just with our minds.
Hmm.
It's also
Hmm.
defined as a being or object, not being, B E
No,
A
that's what
N.
I'm saying. Like, I'm like, every single time you say being, I'm like, are you saying bean?
Are we
Like, as in,
talking about green beans? Are we
you're
going to
like
be
a
creating
pinto
some green
bean.
beans?
We're gonna
Oh,
be
pinto
manifesting the
beans.
beans, manifesting beans.
I like beans. Thank you very
Uh,
much.
I
Okay,
do
so
too. I like lima beans.
it is I guess, an entity or an object that
A
is
bean.
created, a green bean, in someone's imagination by visualization. It
Okay.
is seemingly sentient. It is autonomous, mental companion, subjectively experienced by a psychonaut, which is defined as a person who uses altered states for exploration. I found all kinds of weird websites out there, y'all.
Oh, I
As
bet.
a separate being with their own agency, emotions, preferences, thoughts, and character. So kind of like your imaginary friend, kind of, except
Okay.
for
Okay.
made real.
Now, you and I just watched a movie that was based on this.
I don't even remember. What movie did we
Oh
watch?
gosh. It was okay. I can't remember what platform was it on.
I don't know. I think our
Uh
husbands probably spurned us.
I think they did. I think it was it Amazon Prime? It
What was it
wasn't
that they
Netflix.
created?
They created a man. Do you remember?
No.
Called oh gosh, the Bottle Man where they blew into the glass, do you
Oh,
remember? Oh
yeah.
gosh, what was his name?
I
The
don't,
Empty Man.
the empty man. I had
It's
forgotten
called
about,
okay.
I didn't even remember that during all of the research for this. I
Okay, it was
didn't even
this
think
is what
about the empty
sparked us
man.
to talk about it and be like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what that is." Like that he is a tulpa. Okay,
Yeah,
but if you guys want to go watch the movie or even just like look up what we watched, like we've just had like a weekend the other couple weeks
yeah,
ago
couple
where we
must have
just
been
watched a
because
couple movies, yeah. And it's called The Empty Man. I can't remember what platform it's on, but it was basically it was it's it was very interesting. They could have done really well, but they really made the storyline funky at the end, and
yeah,
you're like, I don't know what's going on. They could have made it so good.
I think it was one of those I had to look up what the ending meant, I
Yeah, I
hate
remember
those.
you looked it up and you were like, it still doesn't make
Yeah, it's
sense. And
still not, they
but
could have done so much more with that.
they could have done so much, but it was like he, the man, I guess don't go watch it because I'm just gonna spoil it for y'all right now. Where they were like, it was the idea of if you blow into an empty bottle on a bridge at night or something like that,
Yeah, that was
then you
it.
can summon the empty man. And so they would blow into the bottle and then the empty man would come and there were days like day one, some
Yeah,
like
this
he
happens day.
he
Yeah.
acknowledges you. Day two, you see him, and day three, he gets you, or something
Hmm.
like that. And so it's based on like this cop, and he's trying to help these kids who play the empty man game,
Like
and
Bloody Mary, which I'm going to talk about
yeah,
later.
yeah, and they like start dying off. And you're like, okay, so the empty man's this bad thing. And then in the end, it wasn't he ended up being the empty man, which confused me a lot.
Yeah, I don't remember.
It was
See, I
an
really don't
odd
remember.
movie.
That means it wasn't good to me in my mind because otherwise I would have said, "Oh,
It was,
yeah." Uh,
yeah, it was made well, but it was like basically the idea, it was like this warehouse and all these people in a cult basically were like, we're gonna summon this empty man. Like it's a tulpa, like we're gonna make
mhm.
this true. Like they were
Mhm.
they were testing out the tulpa theory,
Okay.
basically. Can we manifest a being just because like with our belief, and they had a whole storyline for him and everything, like everybody believed that he was the thing, and they manifested
Mhm.
this man, but it was just the way that they did it was so confusing.
Oh, that's right. I do remember now.
It was
I
odd.
remember it now. It was very odd, but really on point. I wish that I had remembered that because it's very on point with this topic.
Uh-huh,
I,
uh-huh.
I get into all kinds of stuff. So,
Yeah, that's
um,
my 2 cents.
tulpa is also a Sanskrit word used to refer to a practice in Tibetan Buddhism in which the practitioner creates a sentient being through the power of thought. It's the word translates to thought form and roughly thought
Mm-hmm,
form. And that's
mm-hmm.
a lot of websites call tulpas a thought form.
Okay, that's a good,
So, yeah.
yeah.
Some definitions say that a tulpa is a separate personality within a single person, whereas other definitions describe a tulpa as being created by the focus of many minds and exists in our reality. So, all kinds
Okay.
of different views on exactly what tulpa is. The
Mm-hmm.
Tibetan Book of Great Liberation says that while the mind is capable of creating a world of illusion, it can also create any desired object. This process consists of transforming a visualization into a palpable being.
Palpable.
Tulpa is also defined, another website said, as a thought form that is so heavily concentrated upon that it ends up taking on a life of its own. And then modern practitioners of this call themselves tulpamancers, which I thought was fascinating.
Oh,
Never
that's
heard of that.
interesting.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Tulpa answer. Okay.
Hmm.
Way to name yourself.
Yeah, interesting. So,
Hmm.
why would you ever want to create a tulpa? Well, they're typically created on purpose, although I have some interesting stories about ones not created on purpose,
Okay.
to fulfill some kind of need. Today, there are certain magical practitioners that actually incorporate tulpas into their practice, only they might call them something like a servitor. You may have heard that term before.
No.
Um, these tulpa are actually created to perform a task, whether it be to protect their creator or the creator's home, or to go out into the world and bring things into the life of their creator, like bring me love, bring me money. There are a number of different uses for these beings, and one practitioner may actually create multiple tulpas for different purposes. Creating a tulpa is a journey in self-discovery and or a self-development tool.
Hmm.
Others create tulpas for scientific and psychological breakthroughs. Some people do it because they're lonely. Like, you want to create that friend that you can talk to. Others
Yeah.
just want to push the boundaries of reality as we know it and see, what is this? Can we do it? like,
Mm-hmm.
in that movie. Can it be done?
Hmm.
The most prevalent reason for creating a tulpa is that bond. Tulpa creators tend to have an incredibly close and personal relationship with their tulpas. A bond with one's tulpa is usually extremely strong, which isn't surprising since the tulpas know their creators intimately, understand them generally, and trust them all the way around. This allows them to understand their creators and their creators to have someone that they can trust all in one person.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives you someone to talk to. Again, back to the loneliness. Others might not understand why you did certain things or may judge you for certain things, but a tulpa is going to be understanding of their creators because they came from their creator. So they will understand why you did what you did in your past. Basically, it could be a friend, someone who can listen to you and talk to you without judgment. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times people need that kind of thing. They don't have that in real life, so they want to have that. They create one.
Yeah, but
So
like, okay, if you create a tulpa, and let's say you create a tulpa to be a human friend, it can't necessarily be a human,
it
right?
can be human
But it's a
form, or it could
sort
be
of
other
like
things.
sort of like what goes back to our Skinwalker episode where like it's not quite right, you know?
Yeah.
Like I feel like it would be an instance where you look at it at first glance, you're like, oh, that's a, person or a dog, in
Well,
that instance. But and then
I
you
mean,
do like a
it's
focus and it can't be human. And
it's
then in that
your
case, would it give us that's not human, but I don't know what you are
it's your
feeling?
imagination that's bringing it to life. So if your imagination imaginates it, if
Imaginate.
you imaginate it as a human, then it's going to be what you've imagined. Now, like you said, bringing it fully into our corporeal world, I don't know if it would, could other people see it? And if so, would it look not quite right? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, how do you
That's
go about making a tulpa? And the simple answer is it depends. And the
okay.
answers only get more difficult from there.
Okay.
So, modern thoughts are that a tulpa is made by concentrating heavily on creating a fictional character until it starts gaining a sentience of its own.
I
The
mean, would
creator,
manifestation be similar to
yes, you're manifesting
this?
this tulpa. That is the actual process of
Like,
creating a tulpa is through manifestation, just like any other spell.
okay, careful. You might catch a tulpa.
Exactly. There's a lot of careful warnings in these notes. So basically, the creator has got to think about everything regarding the tulpa, including its personality, its appearance, as well as its preferences. In time, that thought form starts to become more and more real. The more energy you put into creating it, I've created this girl and she's got golden locks that are curly and wavy. And, you start to envision, you can even draw her and help visualize her that way. You can write
Okay.
about her, you can write about her personality, and she starts to become more real in your mind as time goes on. This is not a very fast process. It takes a
Hmm.
lot of time to manifest a tulpa.
Okay.
Now, the Tibetans, they had a method that was very similar to the way what I just said about our modern thoughts, but in addition to those, you also had to do meditation. They were real big on meditation as a use of controlling the mind and the will.
Okay.
And possibly they might have also done certain rituals to strengthen it. In the 11th century, creating a tulpa was considered to be an exercise in creating your own deity, which I think is a really
Ooh.
cool idea because they didn't believe that gods were external, that they were more internal, that it's
Okay.
all about self-discovery and your higher
Hmm.
self,
Hmm.
um, as opposed to an outside god that controls things. And so the idea was that students should be able to see that all deities are exercises of the human mind. So
Okay.
I think that's interesting. But after a person creates a tulpa in this Tibetan method, it starts having its owner's personality and thoughts that are kind of parallel to the creator's. It has its own, what's another word for person? I guess personality is probably the best thing that starts to develop, but that's just the start of when a tulpa is being made. They become increasingly more powerful after they're created. At first, the creator might only see glimpses of the tulpa out of the corner of their eye, but after a while, they will be able to see the tulpa stand beside them, and soon others will start seeing the tulpa as well. And then the tulpa would start being able to interact with real life objects. So isn't that creepy?
It is kind of creepy.
Yeah. According to some lore, powerful tulpas can go out and actually do tasks. They can be sent to meet others. They could be created to harm others. In some rare cases, tulpas may actually buck the control of their creator and turn against them. And that result could be fatal. Yeah, it could turn its back on you and be very fatal.
Well, what if a creator dies by their tulpa? Like, does the tulpa cease to exist since that was the creator? Or
that's a good question. Like in the Jewish faith, the golem. This reminds me of the golems that are created with a magic word on the forehead of a mud and dirt-like creature that is created, and the word of power is put on the forehead, and that's the only person who knows that is the creator. So only the creator can destroy them. But I don't know what happens if the creature destroys the creator. Does it then die, or does that word of power or the mentality or manifestation that was created by the creator when they were alive continue on? Or do we just have loose tulpas out there?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. Buddhism asserts that to acknowledge that. Well, I can't even read my own writing, so I'll skip that one. Tulpas have no moral connotation. They're neither good nor bad. They can act, however, as an energetic colander that can drain a person, which I thought was interesting.
Energetic colander?
Yeah, that, like, to me, a colander is something that sifts or drains, something flows through it.
Yeah.
Like a net. I don't know.
Huh. Okay.
That's a Buddhist belief, apparently.
Okay.
The word tulpa, they think, originated from the Tibetan sprulpa, which means to let emanations go forth, which is appropriate because that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
emanations.
Yes.
Sorry. Emanations. I haven't heard that one in a while.
That's a good word. Emanation. I like that word. In 1929, the word tulpa was used by Alexandra David Neal to describe a practice that she discovered when traveling and learning about the Tibetan culture. And she wrote a book called Magic and Mystery in Tibet, in which she explains that she met the Dalai Lama in 1912, and he explained to her that in a state of perfect concentration, he could create many of these, what he called phantoms, or tulpas of himself in any form that he chose.
Oh.
So I guess he had gotten it down to a science where he could actually do it fairly easily. I don't know.
Interesting.
So there are actually guides out there for how to make tulpas. There are YouTube videos on how to make tulpas. It's interesting. Okay. Some websites talk about tulpas just as being imaginary friends. Other websites talk about the accidental tulpas. But I came across this Bethel system on Reddit, of all places, the Bethel system guide to making tulpas. And basically it is the forcing, which I think would call the actual manifestation, that makes the tulpa. The bulk majority of your time is going to be spent during this stage of creation of your tulpa, where you are forcing the life into your tulpa. Before you get to that stage, you start by building a pattern of behavior for your tulpa. You attribute mental activity to the tulpa. It's like building up any other habit or skill. By practicing, you're setting up the framework that will build on and refine itself as it gets used. So Forcing is a general term that refers to any interaction with your tulpa. Generally, it can be just talking to it. That's one way to start forcing it into existence. It is important to let go and encourage your tulpa to grow on their own. You can do this by asking them open-ended questions and waiting for their response, or pausing to see if they have anything to say. You can't just talk at it. By talking to it and giving it time to engage back with you is a part of that forcing act to make it real.
Mm-hmm.
This method is for creating the tulpa inside yourself. As a consequence of sharing a body, you'll feel the physical side of whatever emotion your tulpa is experiencing, and also the emotion itself, which that's creepy to me. It makes me think of, weren't you saying the other day that you're watching Stargate?
Yeah.
And this makes me think of the little parasites that go inside the body, and they can take over the body and then go back inside and let the other personality come out.
Yeah.
I'm kind of picturing a tulpa that way, and that's a little scary to me. I don't like to give up control at all.
I kind of think I would. Oh, sorry. Oh.
I'm right there with you. It's been a long day.
Oh gosh. No, but when you said the sharing of your body, I thought of Supernatural and how the demons would enter the body through and they take over, but the person's
would
there,
still be
but
there. That's true.
Yeah, that's how when you said that, that's what I pictured.
That's true. Sentience is the minimum goal of all tulpamancers, but this is a community, this word in the community, sentience, carries meaning beyond itself. When someone says sentience, they mean sentience, sapience, and ultimately independence. So your goal is to see. What I'm not sure about that method is if the tulpa stays inside yourself or not. That seemed to be what they were talking about. That it's always
and they just
carried,
use your body whenever they want.
Just weird. I don't think it's like possession.
I don't like that.
But what do you do with it in your body then? I think, I guess it's just like an imaginary friend that you can talk to sometimes that actually is physically, mentally there to rely on. I don't know.
That's weird.
WikiHow.
And then does that turn into schizophrenia?
See, and I think maybe a lot of schizophrenics might be people with tulpa in them, or maybe with a strong manifestation who have created tulpas without even knowing it. Because when you have intense feelings, like, what's the famous movie that is so stereotypical about schizophrenia, where Mommy Dearest, where the kid is beaten and tortured by her mother, and she creates other personalities to protect herself from her mother's abuse.
Well, that's not schizophrenia, that's
dual personality. The multiple personality. Yeah. It used to be, there was no, that was not a term until fairly recently.
Yeah, but now
it's called schizophrenia, but it is now
but now it's something different on its own. Yeah.
Yeah. Dissociative identity disorder.
Identity disorder.
Yeah.
But that's the one you're talking about, which I mean, that
could also be tulpas. She created
but
actual other.
It's of the mind, so yeah, it could be in this sense, like this method that you're talking about. In a sense, yes.
And what caused it could have been the intense, agonizing trauma that the child was subjected to. Which, that kind of, as we all know as witches, when you put that kind of energy into something, strong things can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So WikiHow has 14 steps on how to do this.
Oh, great. Thank you, WikiHow.
I'm like, really? There's a WikiHow on how to do this?
Thank you.
So, this is also a tulpa that is part of being in a part of a single person's mind creating it. So you plan out your tulpa's appearance, your personality, you visualize it. You try to visualize every detail of their appearance. You've got to be patient and take time visualizing them. And remember that some parts can be really difficult, like creating a face. Also remember that you can do this any way you want to, whatever works for you. When you visualize, just like in witchcraft, we visualize as well when we are putting our intent into something. I mean,
Mm.
basically, creating a tulpa is a spell. I mean, it really is. It's just a longer. I mean, there are long spells that you can cast. This is one of those long, drawn out spells that takes time to do. You can either visualize your tulpa in an empty space or an imaginary place or sitting in the chair next to you, whatever works for you. And once you have this, and this takes time, once
Mm-hmm.
you've reached the point where you can visualize every detail of them, you are familiar with their scent, you are familiar with the way they move. Do they have funny habits that like they crack their knuckles all the time? Once you have all of that stuff down, you try to touch your tulpa in your imagination. You try to feel their hair if they have any, the details of their body. And then when that step is complete, you'll be able to feel the tulpa's form or surface just by applying a little bit of pressure. You'll feel something there. You won't be able to touch them as if they're like solid human standing in front of you, but you're going to feel something there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can create the scent if you want to, because that gives more depth to it. Imagine how your tulpa walks. Think about the gestures they use, and then work on their expressions. Do they always have a cockeyed smile on their face? Are they mischievous? Do their eyes, crinkle at the sides? All of those kind of things. Then you work towards narration. You talk to your tulpa. You can talk to them in your mind silently or out loud. The subject matter doesn't at all matter. The subject matter doesn't matter. Okay. What?
I think your brain just, how we talked about a couple, I don't know even when, the error message from the
Yes.
like printer.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
my poor brain. You can talk to them about the weather, how your day was at work, what your friends, your TV shows that you like. As long as you're talking directly to the tulpa and acknowledging it, that's what's important. You're giving it reality by acknowledging its reality.
I don't like that.
Yeah, it can be scary. I mean, and that's why I go back and why are we doing this again? And so I have to go
Yeah,
back up to what were the reasons? I'm lonely. I just don't
it's
know.
not. I mean, okay. I know you're probably going to talk about this later. Like, I know I'm going to get so much crap for saying it, but Christianity and
Yeah.
manifesting God,
I think God
in a
could be a
way, is a
tulpa.
tulpa
Hmm.
because you have this whole mass group of people that are praying to this
Yeah.
thing, you know, and it is to comfort, like
I
you
think
create a
God could
tulpa.
100% be a
Yeah,
tulpa.
you make a tulpa
100%.
to make you like because you're
Hmm.
lonely, or you make a tulpa because you're
Hmm.
scared of what's after death.
Hmm.
Like it's one of the things that we don't have answers to.
Hmm.
And so you create something and on a mass scale,
And
and
people
then who,
talk to God and they envision
yeah.
it in a certain way. My mother-in-law is so funny. She bless her heart, she's a very Christian woman, and she has a picture of what she thinks Jesus would look like on her mantle. And I'm like, that is a white man. That is not what Jesus looked like. That is
No, yeah.
not from the region that Jesus came from. That is not what he looks like. And bless her little
That
heart,
is
she
a white man.
swears. I'm like, for real though, that is not what Jesus is.
No,
And of
I
course, if
agree.
I said anything like that, she would
No,
be mortified.
yeah, and it's like, oh gosh, I've studied this. I can't tell you the exact location, but there's literally the stone in which he was resurrected, and
Mhm.
that's on display. Oh gosh,
They
it's
came up with his cloth,
oh,
and
I know. It's
either this is a science fiction story I've read, or it's something they're actually trying to do is to take the DNA from that cloth and see if they can genetically map out his being, his DNA. Not, it's
that would
illegal
be
to
cool.
clone, but think about that. They could clone
No,
him if,
because they did that with one of the like Cleopatra. They were able to synthesize whatever it was that they had gotten from her, and they made a digital, like, this is what she would look like.
rendering of what she would look
Yeah,
like. Yeah.
yeah, like hypothetic. Is that a
Cully.
word?
Hypothetically.
Yeah,
Hypothetically.
hypothetic. Jesus. So anyways, but no, I know that people are rolling their eyes because you have religion. Religion's a thing, and I mean, it's one of those things that's you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am a big believer on if I see it, then it's real, but also not because like manifestations,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's just a lot of holes in religion that I
Mm-hmm.
question. And so one of those things is your God.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you pray to God, but I manifest to the universe. So like
Mm-hmm.
but I mean,
Mate, what if the universe is a tulpa?
it could also be. We could all
We
we
could
could
be
all be
tulpas. We
tulpas.
could be tulpas of somebody else. Well,
Yeah.
that's a
So like
frightening thought, isn't it?
we are a tulpa of a kindergarten alien being in a were science experiment of whether or not they could
That's
create.
a Stephen King type story
Yeah.
there. Oh my God.
Yeah. But you know what I'm saying
I do.
on
I do.
the larger scale of tulpas and
Mm-hmm.
having whether it's purposeful or not, you have a mass belief of something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So therefore it could be, it could become real.
Real. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Back to WikiHow's way to do it.
Yeah. Okay,
So
WikiHow.
you start talking to it, and they will actually start to contact you back, respond to you. It's gonna, at first it might be really difficult to figure out. Oh, hey, I think they're trying to talk to me. They aren't going to be able to, just speak full sentences right away. But it's apparently a very slow process. And then start moving your tulpa into the real world. Go for a walk and imagine your tulpa following behind you or walking next to you. Do this until it starts to feel natural. And you make sure that you remember the way they walk, things that they would take note of as you're walking. And in time, you will learn to feel your tulpa's presence, even though you can't actually see them. You can just feel where they are and what they're doing. You can see them in your mind's eye. And
Hmm.
that was what WikiHow said. Now, some beliefs think that you go a step further and other people can see them too,
Okay.
which brings me to, instead of an individual creating something, what happens when a group of people, like you were talking about, believe
Hmm.
in something? And there's actually a term for that, and I might not pronounce it right, but it's an egregore. They're called egregore.
Igor.
Egregore creations.
Rigor.
Egregore.
Egrior.
Egregore. Mm-hmm.
Egrior. I don't know. You
An
know how we are with
it could be
pronunciations.
egregore, egregore, egregore,
Do you pronounce the gore like that, or is it?
egregore. I don't know.
Oh, Egregore. Accent grave on the
To
E.
me, okay, it's a tulpa just created by a bunch of people. So it's the occult term for a concept representing a non-physical entity that arises from the collective thoughts of a
Hmm.
distinct group of people.
Hmm.
These can be created intentionally or unintentionally by a group of people. Okay, so did you know I have a story about a ghost? Did
Okay.
you know a group of Canadian parapsychologists created a fictional ghost tulpa named Philip?
Okay, Philip.
Yeah, so there was this experiment, and I found I found reference to this on another paranormal, and I didn't write it down. It was on YouTube, and it was a paranormal podcast, and they talked about this instance and their tulpa. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I saw the little blurb on it, and I was like, what are they talking about? So I went and did research.
Hmm.
So the experiment was conducted by a Toronto Parapsychological Research Society led by a mathematical geneticist called Dr. A.R. George Owen, and it was overseen by psychologist Dr. Joel Witten. So real people that have real degrees and shit. So the test group consisted of Owen's wife, Iris,
Oh,
a former chairperson of the Mensa. These are high qualified people here.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, the Mensa in Canada, Margaret Sparrow, she was the former chairperson, an industrial designer, Andy H., and his wife, Lorne, a heating engineer, Al Peacock, an accountant, Bernice M., a bookkeeper, Dorothy O'Donnell, and a sociology student, Sydney K. So this was this group that got together.
Okay.
Their goals were to create a fictional character through purposeful methodology and then, quote, attempt, end quote, to communicate with it through a seance. So they created this character that they called Philip Islesford. They actually gave him a last name and everything. And they referred to him as Philip during the test. And his fictional history partially coincided with actual events and places, but with multiple contradictions and errors just to make sure that they weren't really contacting the ghost of somebody real. So they made it all up.
Okay.
They decided that he was born in 1624 in England, that he had an early military career and was knighted by the age of 16. He was involved in the English Civil War and became personal friends with Charles II, working for him as a spy. Philip was unhappily married to a woman named Dorothea and later fell in love with a Romani girl who was accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake. In despair, Philip committed suicide in 1654 at the age of 30. So the group seated around a table with initial seances not revealing anything, no contact, no communication, no phenomenon. So Owen's like, okay, let's make this more real because we're all sitting here as if this is a scientific experiment. Let's make this a true seance. So he changed the conditions by dimming the lights, changing the environment to be that of a more traditional seance. Participants began feeling a presence, table vibrations, breezes, unexplained echoes, and rapping sounds, which all matched responses to questions about Philip's life. At one point, the table tilted on a single leg, and at other times, it moved across the room without any human contact. Through audio, video, and witness accounts, they documented all of this paranormal phenomenon, but none of them actually ever saw him. He never physically manifested in front of them. And other groups have attempted to recreate this and have been able to do the same, also with no physical appearing of a ghost, but with some paranormal phenomenon. So you could create ghosts. I thought so. Philip is out there, man.
Poor Philip. He's probably confused.
Yeah, he's probably
like,
going,
why am I here?
What's going on? It's like the guy in that movie that we watched. He truly believed all of his history that they gave to him.
Yeah. And then when everything started to unfold, he was like kind of fell apart because he was confused and
and he was actually only 3 days old, but in his mind, he didn't know that. He was created 3 days ago. It's a wild movie. Unintentional tulpas. I mean, to me, this is the stuff that really, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
So tulpas can be created unintentionally by a strong desire or a strong, unformed tide of emotion. Like I was saying, for that girl that was beaten by her mother who manifested personalities within herself. Those could be tulpas, or even by a corporate marketing campaign. Think about how we all know Nike and how, depending on what the marketing campaign is, if commercials they reach large numbers of people and could have tulpas be created. A lot of people working to accomplish a goal or even a societal desire or need that isn't often expressed but resides just beneath the surface. Those can be done unintentionally, and the internet plays a huge role in creating unintentional tulpas. So you were talking about the show Supernatural. There, in season 1, I can't remember what episode, they dealt with tulpa, and it was the tulpa in that story was the story of Mordecai Murdoch. I don't know how long ago you watched Supernatural, but I remember this episode.
It's been a little bit.
And enough people thought about the story and believed in the story of Mordecai and the changes that came with that story that the spirit actually came to life. And the only way to get rid of the tulpa was to eliminate the thought or dilute the concentration of it. And so the Winchesters couldn't do that without the people who put up the website, who were Ed and Harry. And they had a website that dedicated itself to the story, which is where everybody was reading it and believing it.
Yeah.
And so they had to, the Winchester brothers had to convince Ed and Harry to change that website to create a way to kill Mordecai in order for the Winchester brothers to get rid of that tulpa. And it was all done through the internet and the power of the belief of, I mean, because people all over the world have access to these websites. The next one, Bigfoot. Could Bigfoot be a tulpa? Could it have started as a concept and then became a reality through community thought? And is this why there's rashes of sightings? And then when people's thoughts get turned elsewhere, the sightings drop. Urban legends cycle. And so every now and then you'll hear a news story. Oh, Bigfoot was sighted. And all of a sudden you see a bunch of sightings out there because, possibly because Bigfoot is a tulpa and is created by the thoughts of a whole bunch of people.
Okay.
This one, the next one is the one everybody I think has heard about, Slender Man. So in 2009, the web forum Something Awful held a contest challenging users to edit everyday photographs to make them appear paranormal. And this one guy submitted a black and white photo of children with his creation Slender Man lurking in the backgrounds. And he depicted the character as an abnormally tall, thin man with a featureless face. Faceless face. And just after he created Slender Man, other users started to add their own attributes to the character. Some said, oh, he's got tentacles sprouting from his back. Some said, oh, he can cause amnesia. He can be always seen in the woods stalking children. And it was the Coast to Coast AM show that really demonstrated the power of mass thought. That was when, I can't remember the name of the guy, that it might have been that same man who went on the Coast to Coast AM show and talked about the Slender Man phenomenon. And after that, there was a sinister shift in what Slender Man started either doing or what was perceived of as Slender Man doing. Whether he was actually created and is actually a tulpa that's now manifested in the real world, I don't know. But that collective and combined belief would have really gone a really significant way towards ensuring that the tulpa version of Slender Man would come out and manifest. And he became such a popular pop culture icon that they had Halloween costumes. Minecraft even has Enderman. I don't know who all of you know Minecraft, but Enderman is a creation taken off of Slender Man. And on May 31st, 2014, and probably most of you heard this, two girls, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire, both 12 years old at the time, allegedly brought an 11-year-old classmate to the woods behind Geyser's home in Wisconsin. And the two girls allegedly stabbed their classmate 19 times in what investigators described as a sacrifice intended to please Slender Man, which they had discovered on a horror website.
Yeah, I heard that. I've heard that one.
It was big news. The victim, who was left for dead, managed to crawl to a bike path where she was saved by a bicyclist. Of the 19 stab wounds, 2 hit major organs, while 1 wound missed a major artery by less than a millimeter. And she spent 6 days in the hospital, but she lived.
It's terrible.
I believe those girls were tried as adults and are now serving. Well, one of them, I think, might have been found unfit to stand trial because of her mental status. But my thought is that they're probably serving a life sentence somewhere, whether it's in a psychological institution or in jail.
Yeah.
Slender Man went on to affect even more kids. In September of 2014, a 16-year-old girl from Port Richey, Florida, allegedly set her house on fire because of trying to appease Slender Man. Eddie Daniels of the Pasco Sheriff's Department told the news that she had visited a website that contained a lot of Slender Man information and stories, and it would be safe to say there is a connection to that. Also in 2014 in Ohio, a mom was allegedly attacked in the kitchen by her 13-year-old daughter. The mom, who wouldn't identify herself, told the Cincinnati News, "We found things that she had written and she made reference to Slender Man." The alleged attacker reportedly said that she attacked her mother to please Slender Man, and this was documented by CBS News.
It's so interesting. It's like really rampant in 2014, and now that
Yeah.
nobody's talking about it,
And
there's
now,
nothing.
so did the tulpa dissipate? Or if more sightings happen, are we going to have another rash of Slender Man activities? Of course,
I hope not.
those activities were all done by humans, not this alleged
Yeah,
tulpa
yeah.
itself.
No,
Bloody
yeah,
Mary.
but the Tulpa itself could, like, in theory, could have told them to do
Mhm.
said things,
And that's what they
And like
claimed.
yeah, let's say they aren't lying and like they're not
Yeah.
like, getting it in their head that
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Ooh.
And then Bloody Mary. I think everybody's probably heard of the Bloody Mary legend. The
Hmm.
urban legend where you and a group of people stand in front of a mirror and you chant Bloody Mary a certain amount of times. Okay,
Yeah.
so originally the legend was part of a divination ritual way, way back in the olden days, where young women would walk up a flight of stairs backwards holding a candle and a hand mirror in their hand in a darkened house. And they would gaze into the mirror and they were supposed to be able to view a glimpse of their future husband's face. So back in the day when that was so important, women's lives were all about who they married. That was their whole
Hmm.
value in life at that point.
Yeah.
This was a very popular thing to do. However, there was a chance that you would see a skull or the
Oh.
face of the Grim Reaper instead, which would indicate that they were going to die before they had a chance to marry.
Oh gosh.
And that more
Okay.
modern version, which I think they've made many movies about this
They have
this
so many.
tale, this urban legend, but
Hmm.
you have a group of people that chant the name of Bloody Mary. Some say 13 times. I always heard it was 3 times. Not sure which is correct. And that the Bloody Mary apparition appears as a corpse, a witch, or a ghost that can be friendly or evil and is sometimes seen covered in blood. The lore surrounding the ritual states that participants may endure the apparition screaming at them, cursing them, strangling them, which would be a physical thing,
Hmm.
stealing their soul, drinking their blood, or scratching their eyes out.
Oh.
And given the mass belief in the phenomenon, as well as the group who is together at the time of the ceremony, it really could be a tulpa that is causing this to happen.
Yeah.
And if tulpas do disappear after people don't think about them anymore, maybe they do just dissipate, and that's why it's not still out there killing people and it waits for the next time for someone to do the same thing. I don't know. Or is it the
I
same
don't know.
tulpa that's appearing? I don't know.
I don't know.
Other unintentional causes. Think of tragedies that create enormous amount of fear, grief, and other strong emotions. Could ghosts or poltergeists actually be tulpas brought about unintentionally due to intense thoughts that surround such events, like haunted houses?
I could see that. Yeah.
Hmm. The people dying on the Titanic would the Titanic be full of ghosts and poltergeists if we were to raise it today because of all the emotion of people drowning and the fear that was going on, the mass hysteria that was going on?
Maybe. I don't know.
So obviously there are dangers to tulpas. So I found a story mentioned, but I couldn't find the details. It's like disappeared off the internet that I couldn't find it. But it talks about a guy who made a tulpa, which was then able to possess him, which you brought up earlier.
Ooh.
And the
Okay.
theory is that the reason it went so wrong and that his tulpa was able to possess him was because he gave too much power too soon in the creation process. He didn't
Hmm.
take the length of time that the spell needs to have to be done properly, and he
Hmm.
he gave it too much power early on. So you also need to think tulpamancers, if that's what you want to become, you many of them claim to be happy and have healthy relationships with their tulpas, but there are multiple accounts where creating a tulpa has had negative or dangerous impacts. So if you are contemplating on creating a tulpa, consider the following outcomes. negativity. And this is the same for spell work, any kind of spell work.
Yeah.
Every tulpa is born and primarily exists within their tulpamancer or host's mind. Since a tulpa is an extension of oneself, it is common for tulpas to inherit their host's thought patterns, moods, and mentality at the time of creation. So if the individual who is creating the tulpa is suffering from depression or anxiety, it can transfer those emotions into their tulpa at the point of creation. So you've got to, and the same happens with regular spell work too. If you are sad or angry, your spells aren't going to manifest in the way you expect.
Yeah.
So, negativity tends to feed off of itself, and hosts who are battling with chronic, seasonal, or even temporary depression might, quote, give birth to a tulpa that has those feelings, which could be a dangerous entity.
Yeah, it could be.
Violence, the same thing with any spell in witchcraft. Intent is the key role in creating a tulpa, just like in any spell. So if your mind is full of violence or vengeance, this could be transferred to your tulpa. And once the tulpa is independent, that could be dangerous. There's also the danger of becoming dependent upon your tulpa. You've created it, and the tulpa is very consoling and is a great friend. Maybe it's a good, quote, good tulpa, but you might become codependent upon it. You might not want to make any decision without the tulpa telling you it's okay and yes, you're doing the right thing. So that could be dangerous. There's also the real danger of hearing voices in your head, which could lead to dangerous actions. So a lot of people who are diagnosed as schizophrenic or with the dissociative identity disorder hear voices that make them do things. And actually, did you know that there is a theory that Joan of Arc had tulpas and that those were the voices that she heard in her head that told her how to go on and fight that war? So maybe Joan of Arc created tulpas. And then there is the Richard Freeman case, which is the last thing I'll talk about, and then we can wind this up. It is a case that perfectly demonstrates how dark and harrowing creating tulpa might be for everyone. So he was a head keeper at England's Twycross Zoo, and he had a deep interest in the field of cryptozoology, which is the study of unknown animals such as Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, Chupacabra, Abominable Snowman, which all of those could be tulpa, by the way. So, and he is convinced that many of those creatures are tulpas. So to try and prove the point, back in the 1990s, he set about creating his own abominable monster. Being a goth and a dedicated fan of the writings of people like H.P. Lovecraft, he chose to make his particular tulpa of choice a huge, horrific spider of truly malevolent proportions, which a tulpa doesn't have to be human.
Not.
It could be
absolutely not
any creature. You could make a dragon. You could make a unicorn. You could anything that you can think of, you can make as a tulpa. For some reason, he decided a giant spider was the way to go.
Absolutely not.
It was in the summer of 1997, and at the time, he was a student at the University of Leeds, England, where he was working towards a degree in zoology, which is why I guess he worked at the zoo. When Freeman decided to try and create a tulpa, it was the tulpa of a spider god called Atlok Naka. And he took the whole thing very seriously. This was an experiment, just like you talked about in this movie that we watched. It was an experiment. He wanted to make sure that it would succeed, so he enlisted several of his friends to help. These were university friends. So they all set about constructing this monster. They made an altar for it in the cellar of the house where they were all living together. They were all roommates. And in addition to constructing the altar, Freeman and his friends took a large piece of cloth and they painted it to look like a spider web, and they hung it up near the altar. Then at the foot of the altar, they began a complex series of rites and prayers, all designed with one goal in mind: to bring this spider monster to life. So the group collectively concentrated on the image of this hideous spider deity for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it worked. The mysterious depths of this joint belief brought forth something. So it was late one night, roughly a month after their experiment began, and Freeman went down into the old dark cellar with the intent of trying to further enhance, he was going to go down and think about it some more and talk to it and whatnot. When he gets down there, he could see on one of the stone walls of the cellar a large shadowy image of a huge spider, and it was crawling and creeping slowly along the wall. Its eight legs and bulbous body stood out prominently. He managed to break away from the fear that had him rooted where he was and quietly and carefully backed up the stairs and exited the room and then locked that door. He was worried about the fact that they had really opened the genie's bottle, so to speak, and that the group could have really unleashed something potentially dangerous. So they decided that they had to end the experiment. And so how they did it, I don't know, because when you try to not think of something, of course, all you can do is think about it.
Yeah.
But supposedly it worked and the creature faded away from reality.
Ew.
Yeah. So there are lots and lots of stories out there, super fun, very interesting. I don't know what's real, what's not real. I can certainly, as a witch, I certainly believe manifestation is a real thing.
Yeah.
So I think it could happen.
I guess, yeah, on a mass level, not just people, but intensity.
Yeah.
I don't like the spider idea.
I know. What would they ever decide to do that for? That was really crazy. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find us on www.c3witchypodcast.com. That's our website. There you can find all about us. We've got an About Us section. You can read about us. You can find links to all our episodes there. You can find links to our merch. I've been working on short sleeve t-shirts because it's getting warm here in the United States. Links to our social media. Check out our TikTok. Wren's husband is doing a great job of posting really fun TikToks. You can contact us from there. Our email is there. If you like the podcast, there are a couple ways you can support us. Number one, you can leave us reviews, have your friends leave us reviews. If you use our social media, forward on or share our posts so that other people can see about us too. Or you can monetarily support us, which would be awesome. Our site, on our site, we have a subscription tab in the upper right-hand menu corner on our website, and you can choose to support us via Buzzsprout, which will give you access to our After Dark episodes, or you can support us via Patreon, which also gives you access to our After Dark episodes, but also gives you more goodies like drink recipes, spells, free downloads, that kind of thing. And thank you, of course, to our current supporters. You guys, we appreciate you.
We do. We love you guys a lot.
For sure. I mean, they are a part of our coven. If you join and subscribe, you will become a part of our coven C3. We would love to have you. The podcast would not be what it is without our supporters. And then don't forget to check out my store on Etsy, www.batsandbaublesinc.etsy.com. I've got witchy stuff on there. That's where all the new merchandise is going to be bought. You can buy it from there. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back.
We'll be back.
Till then, stay witchy.
Woo.